Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, coming to you on the Hump Day edition of the Yard. Hope the levels are good. I had to mess with it a little bit here, but you take the stuff on the road, you got to come back and recalibrate, right? But I'm back in Starkville. Had a great time with the wife. Hope you guys had a wonderful Valentine's Day. And if nobody told you, I love you. I do. And I know that you love me. I don't love you the way I love her, but I do love you. And I hope that the people that you love let you know how much they love you yesterday. And I hope that you share with all of them how much you love them. But let's be honest, Valentine's Day is about romantic relationships. It's not Kids' Day. It's not Mother's Day. It's not Dad's Day. It's Valentine's Day, right? So I hope you guys had a great Valentine's Day. Those of you that didn't, maybe better luck next year, right? I will tell you this, though. I'm not a big proponent of buying yourself something on Valentine's Day. I'm just not. I mean, I buy myself stuff all the time because I feel like I work hard. I deserve to treat myself every once in a while, but not on Valentine's Day. I don't know. Do what you want to do. It just sounds kind of depressing to me. But nevertheless, we got a lot of basketball content today. Some big developments out there that involve the Bulldogs. We're going to preview the Kentucky game. We're going to look ahead to it, the women's game against Missouri. We're going to talk a little bit about this weekend's baseball series against VMI. We'll kind of learn about them on the fly. Talk about that. It's about to be a very busy time. That's the thing about a show like today. We haven't played a basketball game since I recorded a show, so there's nothing to recap. We're just kind of previewing. And then Friday will be busy for us as we kind of look back on what happened against the University of Kentucky on the men's side and on the women's side, Missouri. But it's about to be a very busy time. It is. And so I hope that you've enjoyed a little bit of a hiatus, a chance to take a deep breath, because I tell you, me and the illustrious Hind Dog talk every day, multiple times a day. And Hind Dog and I were talking about it's been wide open, since Thanksgiving week until National Signing Day. And then, of course, we had to settle the staff, so it's been crazy, crazy, crazy. But for the last week or so, things have kind of calmed down a little bit. So I hope you've had a chance to kind of take a deep breath. Now, I've cautioned you guys, too, with this busy stretch coming up, you need to get your honey-do stuff done. Now, you will be happy to know your good friend and host painted the garage and cleaned out the garage. I did all that in advance of the wife coming home because I'm not a big DIY person. I'll just be honest with you. I don't even like cutting the grass. Like, they've been out here working on the pool, and they've got ruts and everything. I'm thinking, well, that's less grass I got to mow for a while. And even though I don't mow a lot of it. But my point being is I'm not just out here talking a good game. I'm walking the talk too, right? So you got a couple more days to get ready because you're going to be at Duty Noble Field sooner rather than later. And if you're not here, you're going to want to watch the games on the app or on TV. So get your stuff done so you don't have that anxiety kind of weighing you down. Don't be a procrastinator. Go ahead and get it done. And maybe do something extra, too. Don't just do the minimal stuff. Go ahead and do something extra. It gets you a little bit of grace, with the significant other. It's like, hey, I went ahead and did this. Cleaned out the fridge or the deep freeze or the garage or whatever. Take your car, get it washed. Do something. Give yourself a little peace. You ought to be doing that stuff anyway. But my point being is that we are entering a very busy time for Mississippi State fans. And it's so good to be in the middle of February. Instead of us, talking about we should make a coaching change, we're talking about postseason basketball. That's a great thing. And I am so encouraged by the way that our fans have embraced these two teams. You can see it in the social media traffic. You can see it in attendance. You can see it on the message board. If you're not a member of genespage.com, you should be. Go there and check us out. We're bigger and better than ever. Be a part of that. We have a very dedicated group of basketball posters too. We have a group that, listen, they love football and they like baseball. They love men's basketball. And so if you're one of those people that's like, hey, I wish I had some people I could talk Bulldog hoops with that are very knowledgeable and that have kind of followed this thing up close and personal for a while, you can find those folks on our basketball board at genespage.com. All right, check out Bulldog Burger Company. I will be in there soon. Not sure when. I think I've been 3 of the last 4 weeks, and I love going in there because, number one, I know what to expect. And listen, I had a great meal yesterday. I guess, yesterday, whatever day it was, Monday. I had a great meal Monday out in Albuquerque, had some authentic Mexican food. And I'll be honest with you, it's like when I go to a place like that, and this will sound backwards maybe, like I like to see other Mexican people in there because I know that I'm in the real deal place, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like if I go there, if it's good enough for people that are, the Spanish-speaking people, that I feel like, hey, it's going to be good enough for me. And so I had a great meal there, and that's the thing about Bulldog Burger Company is when you walk in there, these are people that know what they're doing. These aren't just people doing a job. These are people that understand the mission they have at Bulldog Burger Company. And so there is an authenticity there. You get great food at a great price with a great atmosphere and 3 great locations to serve you. University Drive here in Start Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowood area. Get the spring rolls as your appetizer. I can personally endorse that. That's one of the reasons I'm as beautiful as I am, is because of those spring rolls. It'll help you too. It'll make everything around you look better. Get that great restaurant quality hamburger, whether it be the Mission. I get the Pico de Gallo on the side when I get that one. The Freshman 15 is a longtime favorite of mine as well. I like the Bryant, the Lauren. You can't hardly go wrong there. But it's more than just hamburgers. You get the great chicken wings. You've got the BLT salad. I prefer it grilled. You may like it fried. I got to keep my girlish figure, and so I'm careful about that sort of stuff. But be sure and go find your own favorites today at Bulldog Burger Company. Happy hour each day, 3 to 6. And very soon we're going to have some tap takeovers. We'll have some information for you about that. So some special events coming up at Bulldog Burger Company you're going to want to be a part of. Be sure and kind of keep abreast of all that, new developments. And there'll be some changes to the menu soon, too. They'll try some things out. That's the good thing about that place. It's never stagnant. You can get your old favorites, but they're always looking to kind of add. I like places like that. They don't just say, you know what, hey, we're good enough. Now, we're always trying to get better. That's one of the things I love and respect about Bulldog Burger Company. Go check them out today. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. MEAT. All right. We're getting ready to play the University of Kentucky in basketball. That hadn't always been fun. It's not, because you know how it is. It's like Alabama football, right? A lot of people are scared to make big calls. A lot of people are scared to do something that, might draw the ire of the SEC office. So it's a little different. So we're going to have to beat the officials, and we're going to have to beat the University of Kentucky, which is still a very talented team. That's one thing that I kind of look to all the time with this stuff is Kentucky's talent is good enough to have a good night at any point. You can look at their schedule and we're going to talk about that just here shortly, but you can look at it and say, okay, well, hey, they're not having a good year. This is still a very talented team. A very, very, very talented team. And it's a team that we have not had a lot of success against. One of the reasons, we remember wins over Kentucky is they come so infrequently. Kentucky has won 16 of the last 17 in the John Calipari era. The lone win we had was a 74-73 win in the 2001 SEC tournament. That was the day of the big Jamont Gordon three-pointer, and they still try to take that one away from us. We have played Kentucky a total of 121 times. We have 21 victories against them. That's it. So you're facing tradition, you're facing talent, you're facing a tremendous coach, despite what some of the Kentucky fans may say today, an outstanding team. We're going to have to play to the best of our ability to win this ball game. And this is kind of one of those exercising the demon games, if you know what I'm talking about, right? It's like we believe that we're a good team. Are we a really good team? Can we go beat a team with a roster filled with 4- and 5-star guys? That's going to determine the quality of our season in many respects. It's going to determine the quality of our SEC record and our place in the standings. You win this game, even though Kentucky's not having a great year, it is kind of like a helmet sticker win. They beat Kentucky. And even in a mediocre year, that means something. To beat a blue blood program like Kentucky at any point, under any circumstances, is a big deal. We have grown up and matured a lot as a program over the course of the last month. We've all seen it. We're all excited. And now we get the familiar foes from Lexington. Can we get over the hump here? Because you feel like if we can continue a pretty good run here. Let's take a look and see about Kentucky. Kind of see what they've done and what they're about. It's also interesting to me. Kentucky, even with the year they're having, you look at that roster and you think, you know what? You absolutely cannot show up and go through the motions and expect to win this game. All right, so we'll start back here. This Kentucky website, I'll tell you one thing. Oh, my goodness. It's absolutely crazy sometimes how all this stuff goes together. It's like people put so many buzzers and whistles on these websites. They give you a chainsaw when all you need is a butter knife. All right, Kentucky is 16-9 and now 7-5 in the conference. They have lost 2 in a row. They are 12-3 at home, 3-4 in true road games, and 1-2 on a neutral floor. So just 4-6 away from Rupp. It all started, with some exhibition games for them, and of course they breezed through all of that, as you'd expect. Of course, they're playing, pickup games basically. But they opened the season with a big win over Howard. I say big only in margin, not in quality of opponent. 95-63. They get through Duquesne's. They get Michigan State, and they lose that game in double overtime, 86-77. That was in Indianapolis in the State Farm Champions Classic. So a big ball game there that just didn't go their way. And Michigan State, obviously, also a team that has had a lot of success in this generation. They respond by beating South Carolina State by 43. They then lose to Gonzaga in Spokane, 88-72. So that game, even though, and I'm not a big Gonzaga fan, I think, I know the college basketball purists despise that kind of talk. I think Gonzaga is, I think they're kind of a paper champion, but I digress. All right, they get North Florida then by 40. They get Bellarmine by 19. They then beat Michigan in London in the Basketball Hall of Fame London Showcase. And how cool is that for the Americans there to be able to go to watch that, not with their British friends, but it's still a pretty cool thing. They go over there and take, 2 championship caliber programs across the pond there and go play a cool game. They squeaked by Yale, 69-59. They didn't lose to UCLA in Madison Square Garden in the CBS Sports Classic. I mean, give Kentucky some credit here. I mean, they are Kentucky, right? But they're scheduling some pretty difficult non-conference games. The issue is they're just not winning them. I guess they got the big win over Michigan, if you can call that a big win. They get Florida A&M by 20 to get into SEC play. They open SEC play on the road in Columbia, Missouri, and lose by 14 to the Tigers. They bounce back to beat Louisville, 86-63. They ease by LSU, and that's back when people thought LSU might be pretty good. The Cats get them by 3 in Rupp. And then Alabama gets the Wildcats in Coleman Coliseum, and they absolutely wear them out, 78-52. And I think that's when the people of Kentucky said, you know what, we're in trouble. It's like, okay, you lose on the road to Missouri that went out and spent all this time and money in the transfer portal and revamped their roster. Okay, maybe that's a blip on the radar. But then you go face an Alabama team that everybody knows is good, and you get absolutely crushed. Crushed. You go back home, and then you squeak by South Carolina by 3. Then you go to Knoxville, and you beat Tennessee 63-56. Now you think, okay, they lost to South Carolina. Excuse me. How did I miss that? They lose to South Carolina by 3 in Rupp. And everybody thinks they're dead and buried. Then they go to Tennessee and win. They beat Georgia. They get A&M, one of the few losses the Aggies have had in SEC play. They go to Vandy and win there by 16. They lose to Kansas by 9 in Rupp. They ease by Ole Miss in the Pavilion by 9. They get Florida by 5. They lose to Arkansas by 15. Then they go to Georgia and they lose to Michael White in that group by 7. And so now we get them coming to Humphrey Coliseum. So you begin to kind of do the math here. They've lost 3 of the last 5, and their 2 wins are over teams that are likely not going to make the NCAA tournament. That's Ole Miss and Florida. So that's interesting. But again, they go out and schedule these very difficult non-conference games, and they have a very difficult time winning them. I guess Michigan, again, is the only one you can kind of hang your hat on, and maybe the Wolverines can claim they had jet lag from having to fly to England. Not a good season for Kentucky. And, of course, the Kentucky Bluegrass fans are just absolutely incensed because they begin every year thinking they're about to win a national championship. That's how they feel. That's the expectations. And John Calipari's done a good job there. This is not one of his better jobs. And there are a lot of people They're expecting Kentucky to lose this ball game. State is actually favored to win the game. And that's the thing, too, when you begin to think about this. Hey, Bulldog friends, our friends from Indeed are back, and they are absolutely better than ever. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire candidates all in one place. Your time is valuable. Don't waste multiple hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find the top talent with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like the Indeed Instant Match option, their assessments, and virtual interviews. You hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description exactly the moment they sponsor a job. How cool is that? The best thing about Indeed, too, is, listen, these are names you know. These are people that you can trust. They know that you're trying to grow your own business. You got to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Indeed knows hiring needs to be cost-effective when you're running your own business, and many of you are. Put Indeed to work for you today. Visit Indeed.com/Boneyard to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/Boneyard. Terms and conditions may apply. Cost per application. Pricing not available for everyone. You need to hire. You need Indeed. Simple as that. Kentucky team at the beginning of the year. Kentucky was picked to win the league. Number one, easily. Maybe you've forgotten, we were picked 10th. Kentucky was picked to win the SEC. It's not even close. It really wasn't. And Oscar Tshiebwe was expected to be the SEC Men's Basketball Player of the Year. When you have that type of talent at your disposal, you begin to wonder to yourself, what's happening. If it's not talent, it's got to be coaching, right? Maybe it's chemistry. Severe Wheeler was also a first-team All-SEC guy. It's phenomenal to go back and look at this. Everybody was all excited. Kentucky's going to be back, and they're going to contend for a potential 1 seed in the tournament. And now here we are. With just a couple weeks left to play, and Kentucky's a bit of a mess. They absolutely are. There are a lot of people that really expected this Kentucky team to be an outstanding team, and they're not. So we have to take full advantage. That's the big issue with us. We have got to take full advantage of this and not just kind of sit back and say, okay, well, this is Kentucky. We have to respect them, certainly, because they have talent and certainly have the ability to come in here and beat us if we don't play well. But this is a very winnable game for Mississippi State. It scares me just because sometimes you get caught up playing, the name on the front of the jersey instead of the back. You start playing the mystique of Kentucky rather than playing the 5 guys on the floor. If we can go out there and do that, and I think Chris Jans is a guy, obviously, that, when you don't go to Arkansas and win at Arkansas without a good game plan and without a good coaching staff, without a good focus, we'll be ready to play. I firmly believe that. We need some good things to happen early. It's going to be a near sellout crowd, could be a walk-up sellout. So if you're still on the fence, I would secure your tickets now. Kentucky averaging 74.8 points a game, allowing 68. That's probably the bigger surprise there. They have not been an absolutely outstanding offensive team, but they haven't been very good on the defensive end. They're only outscoring their opponents by 6.8 points. That won't get it done. That's not the brand of basketball Kentucky fans have grown to love over the year. Shooting 27.8%, allowing 24.5%. 36% from beyond the arc, allowing 33%. So you see, none of these statistics are allowing much separation for Kentucky. As a matter of fact, made free throws per game, Kentucky 12.5, their opponents 12.6. That's pretty crazy too. And it looks like Kentucky's having a tough time consistently getting to the line and also basically allowing nearly the same number of attempts per game. So they're not able to defend without fouling. They are doing a better job rebounding, out rebounding opponents by 7.5 a game. Assists, they're dishing out 4 more per game than their opponents. Turnovers, 1.4, and their, the assist turnover ratio, 1.4, and then 1 flat for their opponents. But they have caused 285 turnovers, and they have turned it over 293 times. That's pretty crazy to think about. Really just not a great job defensively. And maybe that's where it all starts with Kentucky. Kentucky, I've always seen these teams that kind of get out and really defend, and then they get into transition and they get easy baskets. The next thing you know, they've gone on a big run and put you away. Now, Oscar Tshiebwe is playing up to expectations, leads the team in scoring. He started 21 of 23 games, attempted just 1 3-point this year, so you probably shouldn't expect that. I'm eager to see what happens with him and Tolu. I mean, like, if you're Kentucky, don't you want to, dish it down low early and try to get Tolu in some foul trouble? Of course, McNair has given us some good minutes there, but there's obviously a talent differential between the preseason All-SEC Player of the Year and our backup center. I mean, not that Will won't go in there and compete. He certainly will. But it all boils down to that matchup at the 5. Antonio Reeves averaging over 13 points a game. Cason Wallace, 12. Jacob Toppin just under that, 11.7. And then Severe Wheeler was expected to be first-team All-SEC guy, not even averaging double digits. And maybe that's got something to do with it. Maybe he's not played up to expectations. He's only started 14 games. He's missed some time. But we're going to have to get out here and play exceptional. We're going to have to absolutely play exceptional. And this is a team, too, that's obviously, has some guys on the bench, but they're not getting a lot of scoring from the bench. C.J. Frederick is a guy that's pitching in 7.3 a game. Chris Livingston just under 6. And after that, it's just like a basket or two or a basket or so for everybody else. So they're not getting a lot of production from their bench. So if you can get them in some foul trouble, again, this is a team that's maybe not scoring to the proficiency they hoped. You get them in a little foul trouble and kind of get them out of their system, kind of get them out of their sets a little bit, make them play our game. I think you got to go right at them. I think that's who Chris Jans is too. I don't think we're just going to sit back and let Kentucky bring the game to us. And with the strength of your voices behind them, and as Neil Price says, full throat, if you guys are out there bringing the heat, bringing the funk, when something bad happens to Kentucky, you got to compound that. You got to let that marinate and stew a little bit, right? You got to let them hear about it. We absolutely have to have that. I tell you what, looking at Oscar's numbers, I mean, it's just one of those things you look at. It's like, even in a bad year for the team, this guy is phenomenal. And he killed us last year. I mean, no matter how hard we played, no matter what we ran at him, the guy just made things happen. He did. And that's the key to this ball game, being able to control him. 15.7 points a game, 13.3 rebounds, averaging a double-double and change. 68 personal fouls, which leads a team. You know where I'm going with that. But he also, 37 assists for a big man, and that's a guy that's a focal point of the offense. That's impressive. But also 39 turnovers, which is second most on the team. Has 36 steals, which is also second most on the team. 24 blocks, which leads a team. So while he may not be a Naismith finalist, Oscar can play. You all saw him last year. I mean, that guy is just a freak of an athlete. There's a reason he's at Kentucky and not at Western Kentucky. All due respect to the Hilltoppers. Guy's a phenomenal player. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It's going to be interesting. I think we're going to win the game. And I know that's what you want to hear. I think it's got more to do with us. And we talk about signature dubs, right? Talking about getting wins that matter. This is one of those resume building opportunities, not because the Kentucky's doing well. I think it's one of those mental things. And I think it's a window dressing thing too. It's like how they beat Kentucky. Everybody knows how talented Kentucky is. They're playing beneath their potential at this point, but everybody understands when you beat Kentucky, no matter the circumstances, it's a big deal. It is. So I think this is one of those deals where it's about building our own level of confidence. Getting over the hump. At the hump. All right, looking at the net right now, this is always interesting. State now 40 in the net. See, you've come a long way. You've got some upward mobility too as you kind of push ahead through this thing. And you look at that, Kentucky, you kind of hope if you can beat Kentucky, maybe they can get hot for you. But the problem with that is Kentucky is behind you in the net at 44. When is the last time we had kind of a bubble play-in game between Mississippi State and Kentucky? Just doesn't happen. And so we're ahead of them. You get the win, you probably move up a little bit. Just ahead of us is Iowa, NC State, Oral Roberts, Utah State. And in Texas A&M, despite their gaudy conference record, just 35 in the net. And I think A&M is about to take some losses. So you start thinking to yourself here, we take care of business, we can have the traffic clear in front of us and kind of get us some margin for error. And speaking of A&M, let's look at that real quick. This is a conversation that I had yesterday. I think it's important, for us to look at the people that we're chasing, right? But A&M has kind of gotten fat on the bottom half of the league, and now all of a sudden things are kind of, like for us, we had to play all those difficult games early, and now we're kind of getting the chance to play some more winnable games late. A&M is 10-2 in the conference, second to only Alabama. But they open up beating Florida, beating LSU. They get Missouri, they get South Carolina, they get Florida again. They lose to Kentucky, they get Auburn, they get Vanderbilt, they lose to Arkansas, they get Georgia, they beat Auburn, they beat LSU again. And so now all of a sudden they got Arkansas, at Missouri, Tennessee, come to State, Ole Miss, and then Alabama. The only sure win on that is Ole Miss. Because you look at the top, okay, Arkansas is a better team than A&M. Yes, they'll have to go play at College Station, but they're better. Same for Tennessee, same for Alabama. So you have 6 games remaining, and the 3 most difficult opponents come to your home arena. So you can say, hey, well, that's a good thing. Probably gives us a bit of an advantage. But your three toss-up games, and it's really 2.5 toss-up games, are on the road. So you look at this situation and say, hey, they're 10-2. Sure, they can win a couple of these games, and they should. But I think what you're going to see is they're going to drop in the net, and they're also going to drop in the standings. Not enough for us to catch them, but I think this is a team, too, that this will be a healthy enough situation that if we're able to pull that game off, that's a really big deal. Not to mention, what if they go on a little bit of a losing streak here? Let's say you drop tonight's game against Arkansas, you lose at Missouri, you lose to Tennessee, and then you got to go to Mississippi State, one of the hottest teams in the country, and certainly in the conference. You start thinking about that, and you begin to realize, hey, this A&M thing might be changing. The whole narrative about that team may be changing. So real quickly here, let's take a quick look back at what we have left. You should be familiar with this. We've talked about it so often. But you have Kentucky, and then we travel to Ole Miss this weekend. Now, there are a lot of people talking about this. I know a lot of people, they're allergic to Oxford. I get it. I understand it. But the Bulldogs may need you there on Saturday. And it's a 2:30 tip, so you don't have to go spend the night. If you're on the fence about going to that game, let me encourage you to go. If you're within a reasonable driving distance, go. Unless you're going to be at Dudy Noble Field, and many of you have already made plans. Say, Steve, listen, I've been waiting for this for a year now. I get it. If you're not coming to Dudy Noble, go to Oxford. Go to the game. It's a game we absolutely cannot afford to lose. But you begin to think about this 5-game winning streak. If you can manage to win tonight, you win this weekend, all of a sudden it stretches to 7, and then you only have 2 road games left, starting next Tuesday at Missouri, home against A&M, home against South Carolina, that's senior night, and then at Vanderbilt on March the 4th. I will be in Frisco, Texas that weekend. So for all of you Nashvillians, a chance for you to turn out. That could prove to be a very important ball game for Mississippi State, not just because of the fact that it's an SEC game, but we may be playing for some important seeding when it comes to the SEC tournament. And so you got a lot of chance to see these guys. And again, you begin to think about if you can get through Kentucky, you feel like you can get these next 2. Now, granted, Missouri, they didn't match up well with us, but it's a very talented team. They're going to learn from the mistakes they made against us down here. So it's going to be a different deal, but still winnable game for us. And then, of course, A&M, you never know what shape they're going to be in by the time they get here, and South Carolina's ready for the season to get over. Vanderbilt's playing better as of late. But dare I say it, if we played our potential, we could win them all. Now, we talk about Kentucky's talent. At some point, our offensive woes are going to show up again. So we probably got another loss or 2 in us. But let's say we do. let's say we just have 2 losses in us the rest of the way. Well, now all of a sudden you start thinking, hey, we're 500. We're 99 in the league. That's impressive to think of. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 games left. You go 4-2 down the stretch. You finish 500 in this league, and you finish with a net 40 or better. You probably need to win a game in the SEC tournament just to kind of remove all doubt. But here we are, February 15th, talking about playing our way in. It's impressive. It absolutely is. And I give Chris Jans and the staff a lot of credit for this. It's like he didn't see this as, okay, what's year one? We're just going to go ahead and kind of do our thing. I mean, the guy's a competitor. And I love these post-game videos. I do. I love them. They don't feel contrived in any way whatsoever. There is a genuine commitment to excellence and a love for his team. Those guys are playing hard for him. He's coaching hard for them. So let's go get Kentucky. All right, time for today's top 10 list is always brought to you by closewithblair.com. Closewithblair.com. Blair Chandler is my friend. Blair Chandler is your friend. Blair is the guy that also sent us a great idea for the top 10 list. We're going to do his on Friday. That's a plan. But maybe you can't wait to Friday to kind of get your new mortgage application in. Maybe you need to refinance. Maybe you've got some debt to consolidate. Maybe you got some home improvement to do. Maybe you need to get a mortgage in the first place. Maybe you're thinking, you know what, Steve? I've always wanted to own a home. I'm tired of throwing my money away renting. I'd like to have a place I could leave to my kids. And even if they don't want to live here, they could sell the house and have a bit of a nest egg for themselves. It's important. We talk about generational wealth. That's part of it. Home ownership is a part of that. So give Blair a call today at 601-500-2344. Again, that's 601-500-2344. Visit him on the World Wide Web at close, C-L-O-S-E, with Blair, B-L-A-I-R.com. And mention to him you heard about him on the Boneyard. He's going to pay for your appraisal. That's about a $500 value. How cool is that? A lot of people want your business. He's willing to prove it. 21 years of experience in the mortgage industry, and that's a long time. 21 years, long time to do anything. You clearly know what you're doing when you can stay in the game that long. And Blair does, because he's in top 1% close ratio in the country back-to-back years. That's a really cool thing. Have a winner like that working for you in one of the most important aspects of your life. Again, that's closewithblair.com. Okay, several of you hit me up and said, hey, the walkout songs are out. How about doing a top 10 of the walkouts? So I got you. Now, one thing that I will say, I'm not a pioneer here, but I do find it interesting. And for the last couple of years, I did that article. I went and collected all the information. I did the article. Roy put them on Spotify. Now the university's doing it. So you're welcome, guys. You're welcome. Probably a job you should have been doing anyway. But all that being said, I'm glad to have these out here and glad it's available for all of you. Also glad that we can give the ideas to other people. But all that said, here, they can't give you opinions. I can. I want to give a couple of honorable mentions here. Some that didn't make the list. And I will tell you, I think the pitchers did better than hitters. So tip of the cap to Cade Smith for all the above from Mano and T-Pain. Logan Forsythe, Fight for Your Rights, a party. Will Hoyle, he brings Bishop Gunn. Shines Bishop Gunn. That's cool. I love it. I love it. Colton Ledbetter brings up Earth, Wind, and Fire. Let's groove. Colton, I'm from the 1900s. I had that on 45. Get your parents to explain to you what that meant. And then Aaron Downs, Bob Seger's Old Time Rock and Roll. I like it. I like to see these young guys kind of pay some homage to the past. And that's what we're going to get here with our top 10. Brooks Auger, number 10 on our list. And maybe he learned it on Guitar Hero, I don't know. But As Lonely as the Night by Billy Squier. It's not Billy Squier, it's Billy Squier. Number 9, I dig this one a lot. I don't know how good a ball player this kid's going to be. But Austin Tomasino says he's the last of a dying breed from Leonard Skinner. I don't know if I wouldn't have Mississippi Kid. Like if I was going to do a Skinner song, I think I might do Mississippi Kid. Maybe. Maybe that's just me. But I dig it. Always good to hear Skinner play at Duty Noble Field. There are just some bands and some musical artists that fit. That's one of them. Parker Sinnett. Parker is back with the Black Crowes song. It's a change from last year. It's Twice as Hard from the Black Crowes, which is off the Shake Your Moneymaker album, which is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. There's Southern Harmony and the Musical Companion. I've got every Black Crowes album. But sometimes when I'm traveling, I go all the way back to the very beginning. I was working at WCJU at the time, and you can probably hear my radio voice as I say it, WCJU. I was working at CJU, became the program director there, and right around the time the Black Crowes Shake Your Moneymaker album came out, we were kind of adult contemporary, but I worked them into the playlist. I did. Love that song. Love that album. Thick and Thin is on there. Of course, She Talks to Angels. The great cover of Otis Redding's classic Hard to Handle. I think the Black Crowes did a tremendous job on that one, too. But there you go. Parker Sinnett and Twice as Hard from the Black Crowes, number 8. Number 7, Nate Williams. Nate, I almost bumped you up a little bit higher. I had somebody ask me on a radio interview a while back. I said, like, if I had entrance music, what would it be? And this is the song that I offered them. Because my delusions of grandeur know no bounds. It's Hail to the King from Avenged Sevenfold. I've met those guys. M. Shadow's an amazing guy. Ani and I met them actually in Tupelo, Mississippi. Right there. How about that? Pretty amazing. And I love that album. I love Avenged Sevenfold. I love that album. The self-titled album and The Nightmare are probably my favorites. City of Evil was really good too. But Avenged Sevenfold, of course, have had some adversity throughout their career. Most bands do. But Hail to the King, that entire album is phenomenal. All right, Brock Tapper brings kind of football to life, brings the cowbells with him to Duty Noble Field. Brock Tapper goes with Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls. One bell, two tolls. It's not For Whom the Bells Toll. It's The Bell Tolls. Single, solitary. People make that mistake a lot. And a lot of times I don't correct it, but it bothers me. It shouldn't. My wife will say, why do you go to... It bothers me. I didn't choose it, but it bothers me. Let's get it right. But For Whom the Bell Tolls, a classic song. And again, let me say again how much I love the Stranger Things folks and the writers and directors of Stranger Things for bringing Master of Puppets and Metallica to a new generation of fans. You have that great scene with Eddie, who, of course, is named after the mascot from Iron Maiden. Shows that these guys that write Stranger Things know exactly what they're doing. They don't have to be taught anything. They know the point of reference. And like the next week, like Master Puppets is like the number 1 song on iTunes. I dig it, man. It's time to make America metal again. And I appreciate our pitchers for doing their part. I will claim them as my sons. All right, number 5 on the list. Bradley Lofton, left-handed southpaw from DeSoto Central, turned down a ton of money to come play baseball at Mississippi State. You could tell his parents are raising him right, man. Not just because he chose college baseball over pro baseball, but the guy clearly grew up in a house where good rock and roll music is played. And so tip of the cap to the Lofton family. Bradley is representing you with Sweet Child of Mine from Guns N' Roses. Love Guns, how can you not? One of the most iconic American rock bands of all time. And I'll tell you guys, too, for those of you that weren't alive in the 1900s, and those of you that were and don't remember it, and those of you that just kind of fake your way through it now, when you were listening to New Kids on the Block, and Debbie Gibson, and Tiffany, and Menudo, and people like that, and you were avoiding all of us in the smoking section with our denim jackets and our patches and our mullets, right? We were the real deal. Now, of course, many of your parents will come back later and say, oh, yeah, I loved all that stuff. They don't even know it. They didn't know us. They didn't know the scene. But when Guns N' Roses came along, the rock scene needed something fresh. We needed something with authenticity. And Guns N' Roses gave it to us and breathed new life into a rock scene that was kind of becoming cookie cutter. Everybody was doing power ballads and teasing their hair up, and all of a sudden Guns N' Roses showed up, so we don't care about any of that stuff. We're going to get it done. And, of course, if you can find some old pictures of Axl Rose in his glam years. People say, but Steve, he had his hair all teased up in a Jungle video. Yeah, he did. but Guns N' Roses was the real deal. They were a lot like Aerosmith in that respect. There was some authenticity to what they did. So, Bradley, thank you for bringing Guns N' Roses to Dudy Noble Field. Last year's number one has dropped to number 4 this year because I wanted to be a little more objective. You know, I'm a Motley Crue apologist. I get into arguments regularly on social media about Motley Crue with people. I should probably be a little less insecure about that. I'm still really upset that Motley's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I love all these people with these hot takes that don't know the band, they don't know anything about their history, and they all, whoa. Shut up. It irritates me. It does. I'm sure I'll die a young man with me and all my bitter resentments. But now, truth of the matter is I don't have any resentments over anything very serious. It's just this trivial stuff that gets under my skin. But last year's number one is this year's number 4, and it's Pico Cohn's Kickstart My Heart from Motley Crue. I was so happy to hear Motley. And I was always kind of rooting for a pitching change just to hear Motley, which is the wrong approach at a ball game, right? I mean, I shouldn't want us to have to make a pitching change unless we just want to do it. But anytime that I hear the Mick Mars' intro to Kickstart My Heart, it gets me going. I love to hear it on that great sound system. I do. All right, number 3. I picked this one ahead of Motley because, number 1, I like the selection a lot. It's not because I like Foreigner better than Motley. But I love the fact that Tyler Davis, the transfer from VCU, is bringing Jukebox Hero. I love that song. I think it's one of Lou Graham's shining moments as a vocalist. Jukebox Hero is an amazing song. And we're going to get to hear that a lot this year because I think Tyler Davis is going to pitch a lot this year. I can't wait to hear it. I hope we hear it this weekend. Under good circumstances, of course. Landon Gartman, another transfer. Landon showing up from Bogue Chitto, Mississippi. Now, if you've ever floated to Bogue Chitto, and I have, if you grew up in South Mississippi, it's a rite of passage. In many years, an annual rite of passage. Summer had not begun until you had floated to Bogue Chitto. I've done that more times than I care to count. I've floated it on an inner tube. I've floated it with canoes. I've gone down there and camped out and done things I shouldn't have. Spent a lot of time on the Bogue Chitto. And Landon is bringing Led Zeppelin, which is a bit of a surprise, to be quite honest with you. Not that I know Landon Gartman, but I know that area of the country really, really well. And I don't know how many people in that part of the state would pick Whole Lotta Love from Led Zeppelin. So tip of the cap to you, Landon Gartman. Yeah, I get it, because I know most of your friends back home, they're all listening to Morgan Wallen, which I'm okay with. I am. Not a huge country guy, but I respect Morgan Wallen. I do. I know, was it March 3rd, the new the songbook drops, or whatever it is. A lot of people are excited about it. They tried to cancel Morgan Wallen, didn't work out. But I know it's a little rare to have classic rock coming from that little hamlet of Mississippi. Number 1 for me, and maybe, again, I like the selection. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody have this as a walkout or a walk-up song. Maybe they did. I don't remember it. But it's Colby Holcomb's Cult of Personality from Living Colour. Love the song, love Vernon Reid. I remember when Living Colour came out, a lot of people thought, I remember when they first started teasing them, like in Metal Edge and magazines like that, people kind of dismissed them as a bit of a novelty act until they heard the Cult of Personality. When that video hit MTV, we all ran to the phones and told them to play it again. It's absolutely phenomenal. And it's because of Vernon Reid. Vernon Reid is an absolute amazing guitar player. And all of a sudden, that album, Vivid, hit the shelves and everybody had to go buy it. And of course, there's, Open Letter to a Landlord, and there's so many other great songs on there. Love Rears Its Ugly Head, I guess it was on the second album. Living Colour is the real deal. I've never seen them in person. I'd like to. I know they still tour a little bit occasionally. But the Cult of Personality, I cannot wait to hear that song ring out over the speakers at Dudy Noble Field. So that's my top 10. Of course, you didn't hear any country stuff in here. I did, give tip of the cap a couple things early on. But I thought the hitters pick more country stuff, the pitchers pick more rock stuff, and as a team that I think is going to need all the help we can get pitching wise to kind of settle things down, I'm glad we're going rock. I'm glad these guys have a bit of an edge to them. Excites me. And so that's your top 10 list for today. And again, we'll do Blair's list on Friday. If you have ideas for the top 10 list, reach out and let us know. A lot of good feedback about our list on Monday that I recorded out in New Mexico. I don't know what it is about New Mexico. It's like maybe you guys don't want me here in Mississippi. Every time I go out to New Mexico, people are like, hey, Steve, the show was really good. I had several people message me after Monday's show to tell me how good the show was. I didn't think it was that great, to be honest with you. But I was with my wife, and so maybe there's some good shows in the future because she'll be here, right, and I'll be at my desk. But a lot of good feedback about our top 10 list on Monday about the fake bands, and I had somebody on our YouTube channel hit me up and say the 5 heartbeats. You know what? I didn't go in that direction, but I will give you the tip of the cap there. There's been a lot of good movies like that. We're kind of going to be in a similar vein on Friday. I won't give you the details yet, but we're going to be something similar to what we had on Monday. A lot of good discussion about that list on Monday. And there will be a lot of good discussion today. I know for some reason you guys get so excited about these walkout songs. I do too, because I know what kind of environment that brings at Duty Noble Field. But those are my takes on the songs for this year's walkouts. And they'll change. There'll be some guys that'll get in a slump and they'll change or whatever. That happens. But I will miss hearing Whiskey Glasses from Morgan Wallen. I will miss that because R.J. Yeager was such a great guy. He still is a great guy. He was a great addition to our team. I remember that walk-off he hit, I guess it was against Alabama. Really was kind of like his indoctrination to being a Diamond Dog. But I'll miss hearing that song this year because when R.J. came up, I expected good things to happen. It didn't always happen, but the guy had a killer year for us on a team that proved to have a really bad season. And I wish that he would have had a better experience from a win-loss standpoint. I know he had a great time here, ended up signing an undrafted free agent deal with a pro team, recently got married, but I'll miss hearing that song. I'm sure they'll probably work it in on a playlist at some point. But yeah, I'll miss hearing that just because I'm going to miss R.J. Yeager being here. And I miss all the guys that are gone. But R.J. last year, that was that one song that kind of like, when you heard it, you're like, oh, it's a big moment here, and Whiskey Glasses comes up, and so it's like you get this heightened sense of anticipation that something cool may be about to happen. But I wish RJ the absolute best, and amazing guy. And I had a chance to talk to him after he signed his UFA deal and how excited he was. And you like to see good things happen to good people. And I tell you what's interesting, too, is like, he had this long relationship with his girlfriend, and he came here, and he started playing that Whiskey Glasses song. And I even asked him one day, like off the media cuff, I was like, you and your girlfriend still together? And he goes, oh, yeah, man, sure. And I was like, oh, you heard the song, and I'm a kind of person that kind of reads too much into it. I guess music is, maybe too important to me. But I was a little bit curious, So anyway, I guess if he'd used U-Proof or something like that, it may be a little bit different. But anyway, thanks as always for your support of Top 10 List. If you have ideas, reach out to Roy Samonte on Twitter. You can get them to me. I'll try to screenshot them and get them to Roy. I'm kind of imperfect with that, I'll be honest with you. But you can follow Roy on Twitter and on Spotify at Dogmatic67. That's DAWGMATIC 67. And keep up with all of our Top 10 lists. And thanks. We've got a good run here as of late with new suggestions. And it's been such a big part of the show. There's so many people that come up to me at book signings or they see me out and say, Steve, I love the top 10. I like to get your take on things, but I like learning about new bands and new music and kind of hearing some of the stories behind the songs, and I'm more than happy to bring that to you. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. Go by and see their smiling faces the next time you're in town. It's on the backside of campus, very easily positioned. Come out of their parking lot, take a left, take a right, and next thing you know, you're right there at all Mississippi State sporting venues. Very easy to get to. Go by and check them out today. If you can't make it to town, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. The greatest selection of Mississippi State merchandise in the known universe is at Campus Bookmart. Upstairs, the bully shop, been completely renovated. allowed them to expand their selection of Mississippi State merch. Many of you will be heading to town this weekend. Maybe you're in town for the ball game tonight. Swing by Campus Bookmart on your way to Humphrey Coliseum. Pick up some new Mississippi State merch. You'll be glad you did. And maybe you didn't get that special gift from that special someone. And maybe now it's perfectly acceptable for you to treat yourself. Go ahead and order yourself something online today. Have it shipped directly to your home. That's campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR. All right, the women will be in action tomorrow night as they take on the University of Missouri. The season the ladies have had is well documented. It's been a little bit up and down at times. We're playing well as of late. Won 3 games in a row. Got to go on the road to take on a Missouri team that has been fairly mediocre. 15-10 overall, 4-8 in the Southeastern Conference. They've lost 2 games in a row. 9-5 at home. And Mizzou Arena has been a tough place for opposing teams to come play on the men's and women's side here in recent years. Very much a winnable game for Mississippi State. It's always a tough time to go on the road in the Southeastern Conference, but for road games, this is not a bad one for us. A chance for us to go up there and get one and kind of keep things rolling. As you guys are well aware, ladies are playing a pretty good brand of basketball right now. Again, 3 wins in a row. You get this Missouri game, and you've got 2 back-to-back home games before you hit the road to Baton Rouge. There's 4 regular season games left, 2 at home, 2 on the road. Of the 2 remaining road games, this, of course, is the more winnable of the 2. We have to take full advantage. Ladies are right there on the bubble, on the positive side of the bubble just now. We'll talk about that shortly. But you got to go get this one. And then when you begin to think about the SEC standings, your ladies right now sitting, I wouldn't say comfortably, but you're right there at 6th in the conference. The team right directly above you is Alabama at 8-4. The team directly behind you is Arkansas at 6-6. Both of those games come at home starting Sunday. So Sunday and Thursday, and again, next Thursday is Greek night. For those of you in the Greek community, be sure you turn out, represent your fraternity or sorority. But you start running through the numbers here, and you begin to realize you win 2 of the next 4, that makes you 9-7, winning record in the SEC. You're probably in the tournament. You win 3 of these 4, you get 10 wins in the SEC, you're in the tournament. You absolutely are. Let's take a look at the Missouri Tigers and the season they've had. It used to be a really difficult place to play for us. I mean, even in the greatest times, we had to go up there and really play well. Missouri opened up conference play. At Kentucky, home against Kentucky. They win that game 74-71. I guess you would say probably a decent non-conference record for these ladies at the beginning of the year. They were 11-2 going into SEC play, and probably felt pretty good about themselves. I mean, not necessarily a stellar non-conference schedule, but they did pick up a couple of wins over some Power 5 opponents. So it wasn't like they just, scheduled a Mississippi School of Math and Sciences. But they open up with a win over Kentucky. Then they go to Auburn. So they're 2-0 in the conference, and you're thinking, hey, maybe things are going to be okay. They add some evidence to that line of thinking by going to Tuscaloosa and winning by 1. So a 3-0 start in the SEC. And then since that win at Alabama, the rails have pretty much come off for the Lady Tigers. They lose to Arkansas by 22. They lose to LSU by 20 at home. They lose by 31 on the road at South Carolina. They lose by 3 against Tennessee. And listen, we know what Tennessee is, and obviously that shows the commitment the Tigers have to play at home because that game was played at Missouri. They go on the road, lose by 9 at Georgia. Georgia's proven to be a pretty tough home team this year too. They lose at Kentucky by 23. Their lone win as of late was a big blowout of Vanderbilt, 86-69, and then they lose to Alabama, 76-69. The most recent game was a loss at Arkansas, 61-33. We talk about anomalies in the schedule. I don't care who you are, where you're from. When you score in the 30s, you're not going to win an SEC women's basketball game. Just not going to happen. This has not been a tremendously talented team offensively. The numbers kind of reflect that. We get them 7 p.m. at their arena. So that's going to be an SEC Network Plus broadcast. So you'll need to use your app to watch that. But should be a game we could win and a game that we should win, and quite frankly, a game we have to win. If we want to remain in the field, you got to win this one. You got to win this one because you got 2 toss-ups coming up and then a very difficult game at LSU. And I'm already penciling in that loss at LSU. So basically, you've got 3 games to prove your tournament worthiness. We need to win all 3 of them. We have to win 2 of these 3. And I think of the 3, this is probably, despite the fact it's on the road, this is probably the least talented team that we're going to play down the stretch these final 4 games. All right, the Tigers are averaging 65.3 points a game. They're giving up just over 62. They are shooting a 43% clip, but also allowing right at 40%. But 43% is pretty good considering that this is a 15-10 team. 3-point shooting has been a bit of a strength for them, averaging right at 35%, also giving up right at 35%. So while they're scoring some from the perimeter, they're allowing some from the perimeter. They're making just over 7 threes a game and giving up just less than 7 a game. They have been a pretty good free throw shooting team at 72.5%. Their opponents shooting nearly 74%. No defense for that. You just got to put the right person at the line. Rebounding has been a bit of an adventure at times for them. They do have some length in this lineup, averaging 34 rebounds a game and giving up 33. So you see, again, the numbers reflect the record. You're 15-10 for a reason. It's because you have nothing to really hang your hat on here. Turnovers have been a real problem for Missouri. 16 per game. They're only forcing right at 15 per game. Not getting a lot of steals either. That's pretty much kind of a even thing, kind of a slight margin from Missouri. Considering the quality competition they played in non-conference, you'd expect that number to be a little more exaggerated. 70 blocks, but they've allowed 76. And so when you begin to look at the numbers, your season is, you're exactly what the numbers say you are. We talk about the records. The records are exactly what you'd expect them to be when you look at the statistics and see there's just not a lot here to get really excited about. Haley Frank leads them in scoring at 15.3 points a game. Just 2 Lady Tigers averaging double digits. Lauren Hansen, the other, 12.8 per game. Both of those ladies have started all 25 games. In fact, Haley Troop is another. 3 starters for all 25 games. And so a pretty consistent lineup here in many respects on a team that's been fairly inconsistent. Caitlin Gilbert has played in 24 games and started 8. She is second on the team with 23 blocks. She also is second on the team with 25. Ironically, there are 3 Lady Tigers with 25 steals. Lauren Hansen leads the team with 28. The best 3-point shooter on the team is Haley Frank, number 43. She's shooting just below 40%. Lauren Hansen shooting right at 33%. Ashton Judd has been a part-time player for them, but she is a bit of a 3-point specialist, averaging 42%. And that's on 52 attempts. About a third of what you see from Hansen and Frank, but still pretty consistent. Probably put her in some late-game situation. She has not started a game. But again, you look at the numbers here, there's nothing that really jumps out. You look at it and say, hey, this is the strength of this team, because they're basically right. Their averages are right around what they're allowing. And so you obviously correlate that to a very mediocre team that has really struggled in SEC play. So this is one we got to get. It's as simple as that. We can sit here and belabor the point. We can try to hype up the game and talk about what's special about this team. There's really nothing special about this Missouri team. Our ladies need to go take care of business. When you begin to think about what Missouri has endured here as of late, you begin to realize they're not going to be in postseason play. They're just kind of playing out the string. And I think it's important for us to kind of add to their misery. This is a team that has grown accustomed to not winning, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what happens. But you never take anything for granted when you go on the road in the Southeastern Conference. But you begin, again, to kind of break this thing down, and you look at it, and you begin to realize, this is a team that has won 1 game since January 5th, excuse me. That's a long time to take the floor and only have 1 victory. Just 1. And most of these games here as of late have not truly been competitive. Just really the 1 game that was the game against Alabama, and they ended up losing that one by 7. But the majority of these games, there has been some real separation in the game. by Missouri's opponents. We need to go out and hit them in the mouth in that first quarter. Should not be, one of those, big crowds, certainly. Back when they were playing as well as they were, they had a lot of people there. Now, their last home game, they have a reported attendance of 3,698. I just don't know that I believe that. I just don't know if I believe that. But I do know that they do like their basketball up there, so we'll see what we go in and encounter up there. Of course, that was a Sunday game. Their last home SEC game in the midweek was against Vanderbilt, a game in which they won. That's a 2,523 attendance turnstile total there. So we could see, an interesting crowd. I don't think it'll be a boisterous crowd. I think this is a team, too, that is just simply ready to get the season over. And it's not a great schedule down the stretch for them. They do get Mississippi State as a home game. They go to A&M, who is the worst team in the conference. Then they got to go to Ole Miss and play Florida. That's going to be in Columbia. That'll be senior day. But, it could be a lot worse. You could have LSU, Tennessee, or South Carolina. But you look at that, you think A&M is probably the only sure win, despite the fact that game is in College Station. And as we saw over the weekend, the Lady Aggies are playing more competitive basketball. They're building towards the future. So it's a far from a sure thing. It's difficult for us to go on the road and play. It's difficult for them to go on the road and play. You could certainly see a situation here where Missouri loses out. They could end up 4-12 in the conference. They certainly could. You'd like to think they could go beat A&M, but obviously they have to win out to be 500 in the league, and prospects that happen are pretty slim. All right, let's look at bracketology here. You may have seen this report earlier today. Your ladies are currently in the tournament based on Charlie Creen's projections. We're actually listed as the last team in the field. That's awfully interesting. I think we would probably all agree. The last team in, Mississippi State. And at least we're in the projection now, and we can control our own destiny. But we are currently listed basically in the play-in game against Nebraska. The winner of that game would be a 12 seed in the Chapel Hill pod, which is part of the Seattle portion of the bracket. Now, the current projections have Oklahoma as the 5, and then the winner of the Nebraska-Mississippi State game is a 12. People love those 12-5 matchups, but Oklahoma having a good year. North Carolina, of course, is the host as the 4, and then the automatic qualifier of University of Wisconsin at Green Bay. So you feel like, hey, if we can just make the tournament, we'd be happy. But if we're going to go all that way, let's go win a game too, right? So, again, currently, as of today, Mississippi State projected to be in the women's tournament. It's been a while since we could say that. Last year, maybe some earlier projections this year, but now it's starting to get very serious. With just 4 games to play prior to the conference tournaments, Mississippi State projected as the last team in. Not with a lot of comfort, though. We're kind of in a precarious situation. St. John's, Princeton, Syracuse, Bowling Green listed as the first 4 out, then UMass, Toledo, West Virginia, and Texas Tech, the next 4 out. And again, we're in the last 4 in, along with Georgia, Marquette, and Nebraska. So you win against Missouri, you begin to get some upper mobility. You win those next 2, you're in the field comfortably, no matter what happens at LSU. I think we all kind of see it the same way. But again, it's good to see that Charlie Crane sees it the same way that we do, and Charlie is now giving us a tip of the cap. You said, but Steve, you didn't talk about the men. Well, I saved it all for this. Currently, the Mississippi State men listed as the last 4 in and the top team in that quadrant. Mississippi State, North Carolina, New Mexico, and Clemson. Being the last 4 in also has us in a play-in game against North Carolina. And again, these are, Joe Lenardi's projections. It's not the official bracket. But the fact that we're in the conversation is important. Now, that would have us, let's say that he is correct and the chalk holds. That would have us headed to Des Moines, Iowa to play St. Mary's in a 6 versus 11 game. Kansas State and UC Santa Barbara would round out that quadrant. I think that's pretty good. That's a pretty good draw for us, all things considered. But I think, again, the fact that we're in the conversation here February 15th is something that we can all feel very good about. Now, the good thing is for the Mississippi State men, I think the schedule is a little more advantageous for us to have some upper mobility. Now, the girls, you could say, or the ladies, pardon me, yeah, they could win all of these 3 of these 4 games. They could also lose 3 of these 4 games. That's an important aspect of this. Yes, we're in, or we're projected to be in. Now we have to finish. I just feel like Mississippi State men have less toss-ups down the stretch, if that makes sense. So I think there's a little more margin for error for the men, not so much for the women. We have kind of went over the schedule ad nauseum. Let's take a quick look back, though, at the men. We start looking at standings and things like that, and looking at teams around us and how everybody else is projected. We have got to have a good week. You win these 2 games this week, you can't coast, but I think you can feel pretty good about where you sit because, again, once you get through this week, save that A&M game, and even that game I think is a toss-up. There's not a sure loss on the schedule. You beat Kentucky, you go to Oxford, and you probably put a nail in the coffin of the Kermit Davis era in Oxford. All of a sudden, you've won 7 in a row, you're trending, and now you're 500 in the conference with 4 games to play. And then of those 4 games, you should be favored in all of them, but maybe the exception of the A&M game. And then who knows what condition they're going to be in by the time they get here. So again, a little more margin for error on the men's side. But as of today, both teams projected to make the NCAA tournament field. That is a huge part of things as we move forward. The beginning of this year, if I told you, hey, they're both going to be projected to be in the field in February, you probably wouldn't have believed it, but you certainly would have taken it. And so now it's time for our fans to show up, and those that have been showing up continue to show up and help move these teams forward and get them into postseason play. It's been a while since both of them have been in the tournament, and there's only been, I guess, one season in a long time that they've both been in the tournament. And, of course, that's when Ben Howland blew that game against Liberty. But be that as it may, meaningful basketball being played of the maroon and white variety. And so let's encourage our fans to come out and support that. And, again, I'll say it every show if we have to. We hired the right 2 coaches, and you're beginning to see the foundation poured for what I believe is going to be a very exciting run of basketball on both the men's and the women's side. So, again, thanks to Campus Bookmart for sponsoring this segment. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by your friends at Portico. It's baseball season, and Brooks Bryan, former Diamond Dog, I hate to even say it that way, because the Diamond Dog designation is something that lives forever. But Brooks part of a couple of Omaha teams, and now Brooks part of a great group of residential developers, bringing a wonderful, wonderful place to live to Starkville. It's Portico. Neatly positioned just off 82. You take 82 towards 12 like going to campus. The very first right is Pat Station Road. Take that right, go through the 4-way stop. There's Portico. You can go by and check it out yourself next time you're in town. You don't need, you don't need a real estate agent to take a self-guided tour. Many of you, maybe you're the decision maker in your family. So you know what? I need to gather some information. Give Brooks or text a call. Call or text today, 601-416-8075. Portico, 1.1 miles away from the Mississippi State campus. Many of you have had the dream of returning to Starkville or moving to Starkville and making this your permanent home, or perhaps that you can afford to have a second home. Maybe it's an investment property for you, but Portico is absolutely the way to go. You can start with a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home, go all the way up to a 4-bedroom, 4-bath home. You'll be glad you did. That nice walking trail out there. Your new neighbors are already enjoying the high life. Phase 1's completely sold out. Phase 2 nearing completion. Many of those homes are sold. There are still a few that are available. And there's also some lots where you can pick out your lot and have a say in your house plans. If you need a custom build, they can accommodate you with that as well. Very easy to deal with. Exciting place to live. Make Portico your next move. All right. Let's look at this weekend's college baseball opponent. I thought about doing this Friday, but I said, you know what? A lot of our folks are going to be traveling on Thursday. And so Friday, we'll kind of preview the weekend, and we'll recap what happened Mississippi State men's basketball against Kentucky. We'll recap the women's game against Missouri. We'll preview those baseball weekends, and then we'll preview the weekend in basketball. So a lot to talk about on Friday. So I decided let's move the VMI preview to today so we've got a little more time to talk about it. Now, this VMI team, they were brutal last year. They were terrible, but they've got nearly everybody back. Just kind of look at last year's schedule real quickly here. Was not a good year. They're 16-40 last year. 16-40, went 6-15 in their conference, ended the year on a 7-game losing streak. They were absolutely abysmal away from their home ballpark. 6-24. One of those games a neutral site. Everything else a true road game. They opened up the year though last year on Friday on the road and beat Duke 10-5. Kind of like shades of that Eastern Kentucky series, right? So they lose the series 2 out of 3, but they get a big win against Duke. You know, everybody's got a Friday night guy, right? Everybody does. That was one of those games, too. They jumped on them right out of the gate the very first inning, got a home run, built the lead. And the next thing you know, you look up and it's 7-1 VMI. It's like Duke had been absolutely slapped around there. Pretty crazy. Go back and look at that. Tyler Bratt got the start. Went 6 innings, 6 hits, allowed just a 1 earned run, struck out 8, had 2 walks. But a good opening game for them. And, you know, they felt pretty good about life after winning that one. Well, the next 2 were wins for Duke. But VMI went into Sunday with a chance to take the series, and they lose an 8-7 game. So they were ready to play, for sure. They go to Virginia. They get blown out. They take the next weekend, they go to Lexington, Virginia. They take 3 from Lafayette. I almost said Lafayette. They sweep that series, lose at James Madison. Our friends from Binghamton, they take 2 of 3 from them. You know, we played them in a midweek game and absolutely destroyed them. That's when we had the flat tire issue. Had to send Everett to go get them. They then beat Penn State in a midweek game, 11-4. Lose to Holy Cross, and then split a weekend series with Lehigh. They go to North Carolina in a midweek game and lose that 5-1. They didn't get swept by Rider. They lose a midweek game to ODU. Swept by Georgetown. Blasted at home by Virginia Tech, 13-4. Lose to Radford. They get swept by UNC Wilmington, and that's a team that's kind of, for a while there, was a very trendy, you know, mid-major in college baseball. They go on the road and beat VCU. And we know what VCU has done. You know, the Rams have been a very solid program. You know, we hosted them in the NAFL championship year. But, you know, good ball game here. Wasn't a great year for the Rams last year. But Connor Hyzak, the new Bulldog, actually opened the scoring in that ball game with an RBI double to make it a 1-0 game. And then 8 shutout innings from VMI pitching. Interesting, right? All right, so then our friends, they beat VCU. They lose to James Madison again. They go to Samford and lose 2 out of 3. We know what it's like to lose over there, unfortunately. But VMI wins the Sunday game to salvage something in a 1-0 ball game in the SoCon. They didn't lose to VCU and then take 2 out of 3 from the Citadel. Citadel's been a good baseball program, too, in the past. They go to Virginia Tech and lose, and then they lose and get swept by East Tennessee State. They lose 2 out of 3 to Western Carolina. They lose at Richmond. Win at Richmond 19-6. Lose 2 out of 3 to UNC Greensboro. Lose 2 out of 3 against Mercer, our friends from over there. So Colton Ledbetter ought to be able to give us a good scouting report. Oh, I guess he was at Samford. I got R.J. Yeager on the brain. I'm sorry. They lose to Old Dominion again. They get swept by Wofford. As a matter of fact, the final game of the series is 17-3. And then they go to the SoCon tournament and get beat 4-1 by Western Carolina. So again, they end the year on a really big slide there. But here's the deal. It was a really young VMI team. So we can't just look at it and say, oh, yeah, we should just crush these guys. We're going to have to come play baseball. If not, we're going to be like Duke, kind of looking at ourselves on Saturday like, what the heck happened? Now, looking back at their numbers here, let's start with hitting. They returned 6 of their 7 top offensive players. 6 of 7. Zach Morris, not from Saved by the Bell. Zach Morris, their best player in really every aspect, hit .332 last year, had 11 doubles, 10 home runs, was second on the team, 41 RBI, also second on the team, and was 13 of 17 stolen base-wise. He was their guy. Struck out 39 times, grounded into just a couple double plays. That's what good foot speed will do for you. But certainly a very, very good player for them, and a guy that we're going to have kind of get after, right? I mean, we're going to have to go attack these guys. Will Knight was a redshirt junior last year, an outfielder from Amherst, Virginia. He is the one exception in that lineup that doesn't return. So you start looking at these power numbers here. Justin Stark is back for them. He's a 9 home run guy. Brett Cook is back, had a dozen home runs. Cole Garrett is back with 8 home runs. Trey Morgan, not of the LSU fame, he had 1. Ty Swaim also had 1. So this is a team that doesn't hit for a ton of power. 50 bombs last year as a team. They allowed 87. It's difficult to get going. 91 doubles, allowed 136. So you start running through the extra base hits here. They had 13 triples, and 3 of those in the name of Zach Morris, and Trey Morgan had 3 of them. So extra base hits, a bit of a premium, I guess you could say, but there's something to be said when you get 13 triples. But 309 hits for the team last year. Did not hit well. Hit 271, and their pitching gave up a batting average of 306. But only 4 players last year hit 300 or better, and a lot of that came, of course, against SoCon competition. And 3 of those players do return. So this is going to be a team that is used to playing together. They're going to come in here with nothing to lose, and they're also going to think, you know what, Mississippi State struggled last year. They're going to be kind of figuring some things out lineup-wise. We're not. So I expect them to come in and be confident. I just think the talent differential is going to be too much for them to overcome. But if we think we're just going to be able to show up and go through the motions and people be intimidated by the fact they're playing at Duty Noble Field, we're kidding ourselves. I mean, again, you just kind of go back and look at their schedule. They spent a lot of time last year playing in Power 5 venues. Now, granted, nothing's quite like Duty Noble Field, but the reality of it is this is a team that's scheduled pretty aggressively in the non-conference. They played some teams that have some real tradition. So I don't think they're going to be intimidated. I think we're going to have to come out and really I think this series is won and lost really on our ability to throw strikes and then our ability to hit their pitching. Now, looking at their pitching numbers, they bring basically everybody back from last year. And that may not be a good thing. Now, the good thing is they took their lumps last year, but their leading innings pitch guy last year is Tyler Kaltrider. He had 10 starts and 19 appearances last year. He was a freshman right-hander, 6'3", 175 pounds, and an ERA of 6.30. And this guy has a propensity to give up the long ball. I don't know how the balls will jump this weekend. It's supposed to be partly cloudy. I don't expect there'll be a lot of home runs hit. I know we're always expecting that, but February home runs are tough to come by unless you play at Alex Box Stadium. But 14 home runs allowed by Tyler Kaltrider last year. I do expect that we'll see him this weekend. And again, 10 starts for him. Nathan Light, good bet, we see him as well. 22 appearances, 8 of them starts. Nathan's a guy with a 6.26 ERA. He's a redshirt junior from last year from Enterprise, Alabama. Pitched against Duke, pitched against Penn State, pitched against North Carolina, the Samford, of course, Virginia Tech. And so this is a guy that has seen Power 5 hitters, not going to be intimidated. 2-4 on the year last year. We mentioned Tyler Brait was his name last year. This is another guy that's pitched against North Carolina, mainly against kind of G5 competition, but also made an appearance against Duke, as you're well aware of. He worked 6 innings in the win to open their season. Ironically, he is from Deep Run High School. I don't know if we've ever talked about anybody from Deep Run High School, and if we did, maybe we didn't know it. But collectively as a team, they struggled mightily to prevent teams from scoring. And it wasn't just a ton of unearned runs. This is like Tyler Kaltrider, 45 earned runs, 45 runs allowed, every one of them earned. Allowed 82 hits last year, struck out 62, walked just 15. So it wasn't like he's walking the ballpark. He's getting hit. Nathan Light, though, 39 walks against 46 Ks. Tyler Brait, 35 walks against 61. So they will walk you if you will allow them to do so. Puts them obviously in a bad situation. Everybody is a different pitcher in a stretch. I don't care who you are, where you're from. You're a different pitcher in a stretch. This is a team last year with a team collective ERA of 7.22. You give up 7 runs a game, You win about 3 times more than you lose about 3 times more than you win, which is what happened to them. 0 complete games last year. They allowed 3. They had 1 shutout. Of course, that's that 1-0 win. They were shut out 3 times last year. Just 6 saves on the year and 19 against them. So they did again had some competitive games, but just weren't able to score enough runs to get it done. But when you start running through these numbers with these pitchers, there's nobody you look at that just jumps out and scares you. But again, you don't know what measure of jump a guy's going to take from one year to the next. Trey Morgan is a position player and a pitcher. ERA of 7.36. Will Riley was 7.46. Will Lopez had one of the better ERAs on the team as a part-time reliever. He's from Mechanicsville, Virginia. 5'10", 170-pound left-hander. So, again, you start running through these numbers and you begin to realize there's a reason they only won 16 games last year. And we're Mississippi State. We should be able to go win this series. But if we go out there and just kind of go through the motions, and the good thing is we don't have any ceremonies to go through. We're just going to go out there and sing a national anthem, get ready to play a baseball game. There's just not a lot at this point you look at and say they shouldn't be able to challenge us. The experience of the lineup, of course, is a bit of a concern because of the quality of competition they played last year in the non-conference. They're going to see this as an opportunity. Right? This is a chance for us to turn our season around. We all took our lumps, mainly last year as young guys. So let's go get it done. So I'm not concerned about the weekend. I'm absolutely not concerned about the weekend. But we need to get a sweep. We need a sweep. We don't need this thing carrying the RPI or the net or whatever they want to call it in college baseball these days. We don't need a loss to a team that's probably facing another losing record to write our resume the rest of the year. We got to figure it out. I tell you, nothing to kind of looking at this team, this VMI team. I respect the fact they're willing to kind of go on the road and go play some games. They're going to play us, of course. They're going to go play Virginia in a midweek game. They schedule a little bit smarter this year, but they do go to Virginia Tech. They get a home-and-home with Virginia Tech midweek. They will play VCU a couple times too, but not as much Power 5 competition this year as they get ready to get into conference play. So they scheduled a lot lighter this year, which may be a good thing when you consider the fact that they scheduled heavier last year with a younger team. And maybe this year it's like, hey, we're a more experienced team this year. Let's schedule some winnable games and see if we can't put together a winning season. I just don't know if they've got enough on the pitching side of things. That's the thing you always wonder about. Everybody's got an ace, but most of these teams don't have a bullpen. That's the thing you look at, because once you get it, because we're a team that'll run the count up on you. We'll get your starter out of the game and get in that bullpen, because if you had a better pitcher, he'd already be on the mound. But, looking at, some of these guys here, we talk about Will Lopez. Nathan Light is another guy, too, that had some starts last year. But by and large, it was mainly the same 3 or 4 guys. Trey Morgan being one of those guys. But this is a team that struggles to miss bats. We have to make sure that we make that happen, too. I mentioned Cartwright had allowed 14 home runs. Morgan's allowed 10. Lopez 9. Will Riley 9. And you start doing that when the more pitched, the more likely you are to get hit, right? But you start doing that in relation to innings pitched. Lopez, a full-time reliever. Riley, pretty much the same. Nathan Light was a starter at times for them last year. But a lot of these guys in the bullpen will serve it up. A lot of these guys in the pen gave up multiple home runs last year. And again, the batting average against, just not good. Absolutely not good. And so I'm not going to sit here and hype this series up and say that, it's some big series. It absolutely isn't this big series, but it's one of those series that we can ill afford to drop a game. It's as simple as that. We absolutely cannot drop a game. We have got to go out here and make this thing happen and get our season off on the right foot. Like many of you, I've been waiting for this weekend to come for a long time, just because of the fact we need a palate cleanser. Last year was abysmal for all of us that loved Mississippi State baseball, even for casual fans. We just kind of endured the season. We were ready to get it over. We thought after we took that series at Ole Miss, it's okay, this is a turning point. We're still kind of fighting the season. We know we don't have a lot of depth pitching-wise, but we have kept the dream alive. And it turned to a nightmare. And I remember sitting there at Sanford, seeing 2 grand slams given up, and it's like, this is not us. This is not us. So we can ill afford to go out here and drop a game. We certainly can't afford to drop a series. I mean, this is not a good team by any stretch of the imagination. But like all of you, I am looking at this as a chance for a sweep. We have to take advantage of this. We have a very manageable homestand to open the season. We talk about VMI coming in, and then next week, and that's the thing you start thinking about this, man, we're going to play a ton of baseball, an absolute ton of baseball right out of the chute. As we should. Got to figure out who we can trust. You get VMI, and we come back for a Tuesday, Wednesday deal against Louisiana Monroe. And then we get Arizona State coming in. We get Monday off, and then we're headed to Pearl, Mississippi, Trustmark Park. We'll go down there and play that ball game and have a good time. And then we're headed to Frisco. And me and the lovely bride will be making that trip. Already got our media credentials requested. We'll play Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Cal. We got to go out there and win a couple games. Then you come home and it's Valpo and Lipscomb, and the next thing you know, we're down in Biloxi for a little bit of a get-together with Nichols in Louisiana. And then we open up SEC play March 17th in Lexington. So let's get excited about this, but the way to breed excitement is to win ball games. It's as simple as that. We've got to win, and listen, baseball is a crazy game, but the reality of it is we ought to have a great record by the time we get into SEC play. And Arizona State's going to have talent. We all know that. But when you start looking through all these preseason opponents, I say preseason, the non-conference opponents, who do you look at and say, okay, well, that's going to be a tough game for us? I mean, it just that isn't the case. And I'm sure those teams are thinking, hey, they're sitting in Mississippi State with Tanner Allen and Rowdy Jordan. It's not. It's not. But Louisiana Monroe last year, 20-35-1. 20-35-1. You never know what midweek pitching is going to look like for us or for them. They're not going to throw a weekend guy against us. Arizona State didn't have a great year last year as well. That's a name opponent that has had some great runs in college baseball. I would submit one of the top 15 programs in the country historically. They went 26-32 last year. So you start running through all this and you realize, okay, we're going to play our first 8 games against teams that had losing records. And then we'll go play Southern Miss and Pearl, a team last year that's lost an awful lot, but they were in a super regional last year. They were a team, obviously, that one of the better teams in their history. That they did lose a lot. They did return some key pieces, but we've got a chance here to rack up some W's and get some confidence before we go play Southern Miss. And we're going to have to depend on somebody, probably a newcomer. Is it Bradley Lofton? I don't know. But we're going to have to depend on a young guy probably in that ball game. But I think, again, it's important to get off on the right foot and begin to feel good and exercise the demons from last year. That's a huge part of all of this. Get through this weekend and start stringing together these wins. And I'm obviously not going to sit here and tell you we're going to go 8-0 before we go to Pearl because I just know how college baseball works. It'd be amazing if we could do that. But right now I'm just trying to get through the weekend undefeated. Reminder: the Friday game is a 3 p.m. first pitch. So we will get up Friday morning and record that show. It's again one of the reasons why I went ahead and recorded the VMI preview today. We'll record the Friday show either Thursday night or Friday morning early so you guys can have it in anticipation of that. If you're traveling up that day, if you're out setting up your rigs, you'll have the Boneyard to listen to. And then 2 p.m. on Saturday, 1 p.m. on Sunday. And TBA on Tuesday, Wednesday. And if you've looked ahead to the calendar, which I think that the 10-day forecast is one of the worst things that's ever happened to modern-day civilization, but we will give into it. As of now, there is a slight chance of rain on Tuesday, Wednesday. That said, a lot will change between now and then. It will be cool on Friday with a low in the 30s and a high in the high 40s. It does warm as we get into the weekend. Could be a high in the mid-60s on Sunday. So excited to be back at Duty Noble Field. And again, so many great things to talk about. We're back on Friday and have a big show, obviously. We already got our top 10 list kind of lined out. We know what we're going to talk about. Hopefully we'll recap on a couple basketball wins as we get ready for a 3-game weekend against VMI. So again, a veteran lineup that didn't have a lot of success last year, but that can be an awfully dicey thing. They ought to be pretty good defensively after playing together so much last year. But we're going to have to go play baseball. Speaking of baseball, if you hadn't done so, go to dogpilethebook.com. You can get personalized or signed copies of Dogpile, Alpha Dogs, Stark Villains, and Flim Flam. If you're looking for Bloomsville Leander, my book of poetry, you can find that at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, BooksMillion.com, or through your local bookstore. Looking for Stark Villains gear, go to StarkVillains.com. You'd look awfully handsome or beautiful in a Stark Villains hoodie at Dudy Noble Field. And be sure and let me know. I'd love to see your pictures, right? It's true. And as always, go to genespage.com for all the latest information in Mississippi State sports. We're going to blow out coverage of college baseball again this year. Be on the road a lot, excited about it, ready to get out there and go and have a good time. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.